Hey friends, so a while ago I made a video about depression that was like an hour long, so I wouldn't blame anybody for not watching it because it's that long. But that was basically an ad-lib video, and what I'm doing with a lot of these ad-lib videos is I'm just getting into the habit of speaking and practicing talking, right? So it's because I don't want to start making very highly polished videos before I get comfortable with my voice and before I get comfortable talking to the screen. And I just know from experience that having a high volume of output at the start makes later output higher quality. So, um, one of the things that I wanted to talk about in the depression video that I want to attempt to address more assertively is how I went from who I used to be to who I am now, right? Because I've tweeted about this, and the thing that I most want to do in life even is to help people who are stuck or trapped in some kind of situation similar to the one that I was trapped in, and help them get to not necessarily where I am, but get to where they want to go, right? Because I remember when I was in that situation, I didn't really feel like I had anyone to talk to. I didn't really feel like I had anyone um, guide me through. I mean, so I did have like my boss who was a great mentor figure, but he was my boss, right? And I feel like, and I guess that's what therapists tend to help with, which is that you have someone who is not a part of your life, who you are paying for a service, and how that works is that because they are not your friend, they're not your colleague, they're not your employer, they don't you don't owe them anything, they don't owe you anything. You get to have a very professional relationship, you get to have very fresh and honest eyes on the situation. You can be honest with them and they can be honest with you, and it's not going to damage your relationship the way, like there are some things you just can't say to a spouse or to a boss without worrying about repercussions, and like there's no such thing as a truly judgment free space in that kind of intimate relationship. Or you can try and peel back layers of judgment by having discussions, but that requires a certain amount of finesse and social skill, which if you had like tons of that, you probably wouldn't be in that difficult situation to begin with. I mean, you might still be depressed, but you would be better at handling your depression if you know how to ask for help, right? And if you know how to express your feelings, and so there's like, so that I guess might be the high functioning depression maybe, and then there's that inarticulate, the pain of being inarticulate further down, where you can't even describe your own feelings, you can't even explain what help you need. So you might be talking in very hyperbolic language, or you might not be talking at all, and it's just painful, right? I remember what that was like, and okay, now let me just quickly kind of run through my timeline again, right? So I think I was doing pretty well in school early on. I got into the gifted education program in Singapore, which was great in some ways, was terrible in some ways. Um, it modified my, it gave me an inflated sense of self-esteem in some ways. I became dependent on feeling smart and feeling like I can't do anything wrong. Um, that was fine until I didn't do very well in my exams because I never learned how to study properly, and I couldn't quite motivate myself to do well in exams. I couldn't stick to a study schedule. I couldn't revise my notes. Like I was just, you could. I've spoken about this and written about this hundreds of times at this point, and I have basically exhausted every possible interpretation. Was I lazy? Was I, stubborn? Was I some kind of was I beyond my own control or beyond parental control in some way? Was I trying to seek attention? Was I like I've tried all the possible interpretations. The truth is probably some mix of a lot of them. I'm not even really interested in understanding. I mean, I'm interested in understanding, but I don't think it's possible to to come up with a sort of elegant and perfect narrative that explains everything that is static and stable, right? I think there's a kind of dynamic explanation depending on how I want to think about it. So it's crazy because it means that the past can change, right? The past is changing all the time based on how I choose to think about it. And anyway, so I did poorly in school when I was about 16. I repeated a year when I was 17. I was very depressed at 17 because I felt like, oh, I thought I was smart, but why am I not doing well in school? I broke up with my girlfriend. My band, which was a source of meaning for me, was falling apart, and so all the things that was kind of sources of meaning for me were starting to collapse. My self-esteem fell. I mean, I still knew I was smart, right? But kind of my like what value, what is the point of being smart, right? Like that kind of that thing crushed and collapsed in some way, and I was miserable and sad. And I think I did develop emotional intelligence playing in a band and having bandmates and having friends. And I would meet my friends near their place for drinks and tea all the time, and we would just talk about life and being sad and all of those things and being optimistic. It's when you want to talk about something, you tend to isolate the thing that you're talking about. But I have good memories of that time as well, being 17, being optimistic. So I'm depressed and frustrated and angry, but I'm also optimistic and hopeful and, having fun with my friends. Like, it was all happening at the same time. It's all happening, right? And so that went on. In Singapore, when you're 18 or 19, you're done in junior college or polytechnic, and you're done in school, you have to serve in the military or in the police or in the civil defense force. I was sent to the military, and I spent a couple of years there. Writing a lot, blogging, reading a lot, trying to be an autodidact, right? Trying to teach myself things that I felt like I should learn, trying to rekindle my kind of childhood curiosity. So when I was a child, before I had to go to school, I was reading as much as I could. I was, and I wasn't trying to read as much as I could. I just liked reading, so I just read as much as I could. And when school happened, I had to now balance my natural curiosity with this framework that exists that I have to participate in, that I don't have a choice to participate in. And I tried to persuade myself that I wanted to participate in it, but I didn't really. And there were no adults I could talk to about this in a way that didn't involve some kind of bullshit, I think. I had like a couple of older friends from the internet, from like Singapore Gamers Social Forum. I had this friend Dominic that I respected, who's a lawyer, and he kind of talked to me about it in the sense of Visa, in life, you are going to find yourself in situations where you will have to struggle with things that you did not choose, and it's worth, while you don't want to stay in those situations longer than you have to, learning to navigate those situations well will serve you in the long run on when you're trying to do what you want. So I hearing that from an adult that I respected was refreshing and helpful, and I pretty much ignored him at the time, I think. And I there's a tension to it. You don't just pick one thing or the other thing. You kind of live. There's that Nisrigata. Am I pronouncing it right? There's that quote by that spiritual guy who's like, wisdom tells me that I am nothing, and love tells me that I'm everything. And between these two banks flows the river of my life. Right? And the same is true for, should you tolerate discomfort? Like, yeah, you should sometimes, but sometimes you shouldn't. And like, how do you know the answer? You don't. Like life is an exercise in figuring that shit out. Like, you don't solve it at 25 and then the next 50 years you're good, You might think you have an idea at 25, and then you don't encounter a situation that rattles you until you're 40, 45. And then you're like, oh shit, the thing that worked for me when I was 25 doesn't work anymore. So, environments can change, contexts can change. A rule of thumb that works great in one environment can change and no longer be relevant in another environment. I think, so right now we are going through this global pandemic, right? And the thing that stay safe, wash your hands, blah, blah, blah. That said, the thing that I do like about a changing environment is that you see how certain things that used to make sense don't make sense anymore. Certain things that previously might not have made sense, make sense. Now, things change. Like, the world is not static. We live in a dynamic world, right? And it may not be obvious to you while you're going through whatever it is that you're going through day to day, especially when you're young. But, a big part of what kept me going through all of my depressed states was knowing, believing from reading history and reading science and just reading about the world, right? The world has been through World War One, World War Two, plagues, pandemics, natural disasters. We went from religious wars and crusades and the scientific revolution, and just everything changes. The world doesn't stay the same. And maybe, like if you're born 50,000 years ago, then yeah, like your life will be the same during your life. But we live in the most change-heavy times, and it's going to change more, right? So all the more, if you have some emotional state or some psychological state that's a certain way that you don't like, and you can't seem to change it overnight, that doesn't mean it's not going to change over a year, over 5 years, over 10 years. It's very difficult for anybody to stay trapped in, not to stay trapped, to sustain a mental state for a very long period of time is difficult, even a depressed state. Although I do think, when I reflect on like older people that I know who are kind of, like these grumpy old men, and I'm not judging them for being grumpy old men, but you know who I'm talking about, like people who are kind of in their like they feel like their life is over. They feel like they had a shot and or they were supposed to have a shot and like life didn't give it to them, or it was taken from them, and maybe that was true in some way, but they're basically kind of angry and resentful. And if you want, and I feel like with these guys that I know, they hold on to their anger and resentment as it's kind of a grudge against life, right? It's like a grudge against the ocean. And you just stand there, hold your ground in your frustration, like, oh, it's not fair what happened to me, I'm so mad. And then you stay in that state. And it's a kind of self-preservation. You're preserving that shitty state, but it's yours, and it's stable, and it's familiar, and it's predictable. It's a form of self-preservation. I think Russell Brand mentioned this in a conversation with Jordan Peterson, which I wasn't expecting it to be good, but it was pretty good in some parts, actually. Where Russell Brand says that addiction is a kind of self-preservation, right? Like, it's a routine, it's you seek the high, sure, but like there is that within the self, and if you want to go Alan Watts on this, there is the grand self that we are all a part of, and then within the individual human personal self, there are sub-selves, right? And the addictive junkie sub-self is kind of, there's this fearful, how will I live without this reliable source of pleasure? Like, how will I find meaning? How will I find joy? Will life ever be pleasant again? And yeah, there's chemical elements to it, but you get what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you can just kind of walk away from addiction. Addiction is a disease. It's difficult. It's there's layers to it. There's chemical components to it. And at the same time, there is something that is true about having an addictive mindset and using addiction as a form of self-preservation. It's true in my experience, so maybe it's not true for everyone, but it was true for Russell Brand. I've never done kind of hard drugs, but I've been addicted to video games. I've been addicted to staying up late at night. I've been addicted to my patterns of behavior, and it's true for me that it's a kind of self-preservation. And so, wanting to step away from that is a recreation of the self. It's a rebirth. There is a death involved in rebirth, and in death there's grief. Like, it's not pretty, it's not pleasant, it's very painful. There's a lot of crying involved, there's a lot of despair and screaming and pain and frustration. But if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that some part of, again, like the self, there's many sub-selves. There's the depressed sub-self. There's also the optimistic sub-self. There's the part of you that wants to experience novelty and joy and excitement and creativity and meet new friends, go to new places, see new things, feel new feelings, have a new perspective on the world and yourself, right? And so there's that tension. How do you get from here to here? And I think a trap that some people fall into is they think that the optimist, there's that whole the wolf you feed idea. There's good, there's bad, and good must conquer evil. And very often the idea of how do you conquer evil, your concept of conquest is informed by violence and coercion and negative thing. I'm going to spoil a movie for you. I'm not sure if it's Divergent or Insurgent, but it's one of those movies. And it's kind of like a standard dystopian teenage girl with they live in a world with factions, and she's like the avatar of the factions, like she's the one to unite them all. And then there comes this moment where she faces up against a mirror image of herself, like her dark alter ego, and the dark alter ego is like gonna attack her, and she's like, the dark alter ego says, no one, you caused so much pain and destruction and death, like people died because of you, and no one's ever gonna forgive you for that. And she was gonna fight back, and then she like drops her arms and she's like, that's not true, because I will. I forgive myself. And that was like, whoa, then they use that to make an interesting point, which is that, the conflict within you it's very fair to describe it as a conflict between people. I think very often people, and myself at some point, I'm sure, you try to improve yourself by trying to attempt to assert this sort of fascist regimentation over yourself, and it is fascist. It is. You're trying to coerce yourself. You're trying to dominate yourself and use force or threats or fear to nudge yourself towards what you think is good. And I find that appreciating this within myself has helped me understand dysfunctional families, dysfunctional communities, dysfunctional. It goes all the way. It's a fractal it's a self-similar fractal from the self all the way to, it explains community policing, right? So a thing with a lot of immigrant families and stuff is that, the parents are scared and they want their children to be successful so they don't suffer the way they did. But the thing about the fearful, traumatized self is that there's the fear of what they know is so much bigger and more vivid than the fear that they are passing on, or the discomfort or the pain that they're passing on. They're like, I've suffered in ways that I don't want you to suffer, and so I will make you suffer now so that you suffer less in the future. But if the child has not seen the suffering, they will not appreciate what's going on. You can't transmit this idea in a simple and compressed way. You have to convey everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I was going to go somewhere with that. That was going to be quite interesting. Did I lose it? I think I lost it. Something about just conveying ideas. I lost it. Anyway, okay. So I was depressed at 17. I was depressed again at 24, 25. And that was, after I got married to the love of my life. I got a great job with a great boss, and I had a shitty commute to work every day. And I was just really tired, really stressed. And it was good. It wasn't like, oh, I hate my boss or I hate my wife. I had solved many of the things that I never expected that I would one day solve. And yet, my daily commute was miserable. Life just felt relentless. It just felt like I was always behind my work. I was, at the time what I was doing to get meaning in life was to blog and write about politics and society in Singapore. And I couldn't juggle that and work at the same time. And so it seemed obvious that I had to keep work afloat because I had to pay my bills. So I made the decision to abandon my social commentary stuff. And that was the collapse of meaning for me. I moved away from my friends when I got married. And, we no longer related to each other as much because now I'm a married person and they're still single and trying to find dates and stuff. I mean, we still hang out like once every 6 months or something, but the collapse of that and the collapse of that and the chronic stress and the feeling that, here I am, 25 years old, don't have a lot of money, don't really have I mean, I had plans. I had a plan for how I wanted to live my life, but it felt like I was very far removed from that plan. I was stressed out about some family stuff that I don't feel like talking about right now. But, it was just, I was so trapped in my life. It felt like my life was a jail sentence, and that, everything eventually falls apart. Everything gets worse. Everything that you enjoy, the hedonic treadmill means that, whatever it is that gives you pleasure now will give you less pleasure tomorrow, and just keeps getting worse. Whatever it is that's painful seems to get worse, right? And that's partially true, partially not. Chronic pains get worse, but you can learn to deal with them. But I didn't feel like I had the energy. I knew that I should exercise, but I didn't feel like it. I was fucking exhausted. I was eating junk food all the time, and I was trying not to. And I would have little experiments where I would try to fix my diet, but it wasn't working out. I would try to work out, but I didn't have the energy. I had trouble sleeping because I was stressed about work. On retrospect, so very recently, like in the past 2 or 3 months, I've learned to do breath work, which is to breathe. And the way I do it, so somebody sent me a video about box breathing. And box breathing is, you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and you hold your breath for 4 seconds. I tried that. I followed a video that was doing it, and it was pretty great. And, I kept doing it, but now I improvise and do it in a way that I like. And just randomly throughout the day now, I just... I would hold the breath in between, but I find that I wish I had learned that at the start. I wonder what would have been like if I learned that when I was a teenager, which is just to take deep breaths, hold, exhale, inhale, hold. Like you just repeat that, and it calms you down. And I think there's stuff about the parasympathetic nervous system. There's stuff about cortisol levels, and I find that doing that in the morning wakes me up. It makes me alert. It brightens my eyes, and doing it in the evening, like doing it before I sleep, helps me sleep better. And the thing, I mean, I didn't need it to get to where I am, but I feel like if I had done it, I would have gotten to where I am faster. But, I can't test that hypothesis for myself since I'm already here. But maybe some of you guys can test it out for me and let me know how it works. I bet it would help, and I'm curious to hear from people if it helps. I'm pretty sure it would help because it's helping me at this point in my journey, and I'm very, very sure it would have helped back then. Other things that helped me were, I was journaling a lot. I was writing about my feelings all the time. If I could go back, I would... I think I agonized about things a little bit too much. I would go faster. I would just write quick snapshots every day of, I'm feeling like this thing happened, I'm stressed about this, I'm worried that I can't do that, work feels overwhelming, I have to do, this is my to-do list, and the thing that's stopping me from doing this is that, I don't want to do that because I'm scared. I can reduce the amount of fear that I feel about that by talking about it with a colleague, looking up other examples, I would say that so much of my stress on retrospect was, I want to say hallucinated, but that's not entirely correct. It's kind of imagined. I think it was some part of me trying to protect myself. And, where I am right now, I choose to be grateful to that part of me that was trying to protect me, even though I know that it wasn't doing its job properly, it wasn't succeeding, it wasn't achieving its result. But if I get mad about it, I will be making it worse. You get it? So it's it's really developing this nourishing, supportive presence. And again, with this video, I don't know if I have succeeded in condensing everything that I wanted to say. I want to end this video before half an hour, so I'm going to just end it now. But I'll probably do another video like this again, and each time I do it, I'll probably get better at condensing everything I want to say. And it gets so meta, right? Because I believe that I will continue to get better at what I'm doing because I have the practice that has proven to me that I get better at what I do if I keep doing it. So I'm gonna keep doing it, and feel free to ask me questions in the comments because your questions help me clarify my own thinking and it helps me focus on what I should be focusing on. And I wish you all the best on your respective journeys. Then.